everyone. I just want to do a really short video. I hope it'll be short anyway. Just as we enter December and move towards the full supermoon in Gemini on the 4th, there are just a few things that I think would be helpful to add to that. And I'll put the video, the full video for the full supermoon in Gemini that I did a couple of weeks ago below this one, so you can check that out as well. But just to pick up some very recent developments, I'm filming this on the 29th, and on the 28th, yesterday, Saturn moved stationary direct at 2509 of Pisces, and it will now move very briskly forwards until it enters Aries on February the 14th, and it will stay then in Aries for approximately another 2.5 years. So it's forward motion. Today, the 29th, Mercury is also moving direct, stationary direct at 20 degrees 42 minutes of Scorpio, and then Neptune will move stationary direct on the 10th of December. So we should, with these forward moving planets, have an increasing sense of clarity, but it's still very much with Saturn and Neptune still in their old signs, Uranus still in its old sign of Taurus. There's still this sense of perhaps being one foot in each world, or in a void or a vacuum. You're in between episodes in life, let us say. And although your next episode may not fully manifest until the kind of early to mid months of 2026, this is a very useful time of incubation, of chrysalis and incubation. But with the change of direction of those three planets, we could be starting to see some chinks of light in terms of where we are headed. And you may be feeling some sadness too, some grieving for the loss of circumstances or relationships, perhaps of all kinds, where it just feels sad. There wasn't necessarily an argument or a falling out. It's just you drifted apart because you were just no longer on the same frequency that you might have been on together for many years. And there is a sense of sadness about that. So honor that, bless and send love to that relationship and that person in being with you as part of your journey in your life, but know that we can't always be with one person all the way through our whole life's journey. This is a natural process, but it's particularly emphasized right now as these energies are changing so rapidly. So, and it could also be a sense of a loss of your own identity. Who was that old you that you it feels like an empty shell to some extent. Your values may have changed a lot, the things that really mattered to you in your life. It could have been success in your work and your title and your promotions, whatever it was, or just feeling very financially secure with a lot of money in your bank account if you were lucky enough to have that. And as we move forwards, all of those things will be less and less important for us all, I suggest. It will be much more about coming together and sharing in new relationships that are very heart-centered, heartfelt, on the same frequency, sharing resources, collaborating, coming together maybe to grow food, maybe to share space together in some way. There's going to be more and more of these grassroots communities springing up all over the world, as they are already with Pluto in Aquarius. And to get a clearer idea of what may be beginning to manifest for you, I've talked a lot, as have all the other astrologers, about this very important Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which is happening on the 20th of February. It's happening at 0 degrees 44 minutes of Aries. And although this is a repeating, roughly 36-year cycle of this conjunction, it hasn't happened for almost 6,000 years at 0 of Aries. So, and again, to credit my very good friend Heather Ensworth, she discovered that it last happened at 0 of Aries in 4,361 BC. So thank you, Heather. And that really shows that the rarity of these times and the potency of these times, because this is the creator degree, the pure potentiality of your next episode. So See where 0 of Aries falls in your chart, which house area. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download a free birth chart from my website and go to this link below, and you can get a 2-part video series. It are teaching videos, not personal birth chart analysis, that you can watch to infinity, as often as you like, for as long as you like, that will take you from 0 to explain to you how to find all these points in your chart that I refer to in every update, and the beginnings of what it means for you in terms of the house area. Is it your career? Is it your health? Is it your money? Is it, what is it? Is your romantic area? So firstly, pin down where 0 of Aries is for you. And then the second video in that series, I think, is particularly helpful because you also need to look to the houses that Saturn and Neptune rule in your chart. And I can't possibly tell you that. I mean, there's so many of you listening to this, and you've got to work that out for yourself. So, but those videos will do that for you. And that's a very important step in getting the meaning. So where 0 of Aries falls, and also which house area it falls in, and which houses as well Saturn and Neptune rule in your birth chart. If none of that makes sense, consider getting this 2-part video series. People are really loving these because you can watch them just dozens and hundreds of times if you like, but they really take you from a 0 start. So, yes, that will give you some inkling of where this new episode may develop in your life. But also, I would suggest looking back to the mid-months of 2025, May, June, July of this year, when Saturn and Neptune had entered Aries and were coming very, very close together. They pretty much came together by degree, but not by minute. And the strongest month for that would probably be June. So look back to the mid-months of this year, particularly around June, and just try and remember what new idea, new project, new passion, new interest, new relationship, new what was emerging in your life that hadn't really been there before. Think back, because that is likely to start to manifest much more fully in 2026. And I talked about those middle months being your rehearsal time because all the outer planets are moving into their new signs and kind of just briefly giving us a taster, a rehearsal time of what is going to more fully manifest for you in 2026. For me, I spent a week in June at a wonderful shamanic retreat for a week. I absolutely adored it. And I've now enrolled on a 2-year shamanic training course as of spring next year. So that's a very good example. And I kind of wasn't thinking in that way when I went off to that in June, but that's a very good example of how it may manifest in your life. So try and think back, because that will be very helpful for you as guidance in terms of what is new in this episode that's emerging. Think freedom, think expansion, and think new possibilities. Think spaciousness, because the shift in the level of consciousness that we are going through in these coming months is quite extraordinary. And it's not just me that's now talking about it. Very gifted people that I speak to are talking about it. So it's really quite a jump from, and of course it will be continuing ad infinitum, but it's quite a jump from the very dense 3D life we've led into opening up of something much bigger, much wider, much more multidimensional, much more psychically sensitive, much more loving, much more compassionate, peaceful, joyful, all of those words that won't surprise you. So December is a very intense month. Sorry to use that word again, because the astrology is very full in this month. And I'm just really going to be talking about the lead in to this month, because as well as all the astrology, and I've still got to do the video for the second half of the month, which of course will be jam-packed with a new moon in Sagittarius on the 20th, three-eye Atlas being closest to Earth on the 19th, and the solstice on the 21st. So that is a very, very dynamic window of time and window of opportunity for us. But we have these game changers of 3i Atlas, and its apparently accompanying comet, 6 comets, that are game changers, because we've never had 3i Atlas before. We probably never ever have it again. Or is it just the beginning of a whole spate of a lot more out there beings, let's call them, beings of high intelligence and high consciousness? That's what I want to call 3i Atlas. And many of us have connected to 3i Atlas ourselves in our meditations. If you'd like to try that, just close your eyes, drop into your breath, and ask your higher self to connect you to 3i Atlas in your meditation, in your dream time, and just see what comes. Because people generally, I would say, are feeling a great deal of love, waves of love coming from 3i Atlas. But we'll get more information as it comes closer to us, particularly around the 19th. Now, electromagnetically at the moment, things are very lively, very volatile. Just in the last 24 hours, we've had 2 very large earthquakes, a 6.3 in Indonesia and a 6 in Alaska. And so these are very large, because the earthquake scale is like the Richter scale, it's exponential. And so those are very significant. In the last 24 hours, we've also had 4 M-class flares, and that's a lot in 24 hours. A geomagnetic storm is apparently on its way, and that can be very disruptive to sleep, to radio signals, power grids. It's very heightened electromagnetic volatility. And just today it was announced that is recalling 6,000 aircraft of its Airbuses, which is about half of its fleet, I think, of Airbus planes, because the heightened solar activity is actually causing software malfunctions that have to be corrected, obviously, for safety purposes. And so that is going to cause a lot of flight disruptions going forwards, because those planes will be out of commission for a period of time, and nobody quite knows that period of time, whether it's days or weeks, in order to correct those malfunctions. And reminds me of an old pilot's joke that it's so much better to be on the ground wishing you're in the air than in the air wishing you're on the ground. So hence the urgency of getting those fixed. Currently, the Sun, Venus and Mars are in the sign of Sagittarius, interestingly, and that's the sign of flight. And also the Sun, right at the full moon in Gemini on the 4th, full supermoon. Remember, the moon is much closer to the Earth in its orbit, and that full supermoon is at 13 degrees 04 of Gemini. The Sun at 13 degrees 04 of Sagittarius is quindecile, 165-degree aspect to Uranus. The quindecile is an aspect of upset or upheaval, and Uranus is also connected to aviation, because Uranus in myth was the sky god, but it's connected more to a kind of engineering kind of side of aviation, whereas Sagittarius is connected to pure flight, often connected to birds as well, without the kind of engineered side, but both are connected to flight and freedom, by the way. So I will put the link for the Boeing news that broke today under this video as well. So we're heading into this mutable grand cross, this full supermoon on the 4th. Now, Sun and Moon are always opposite each other at a full moon. So we have the Moon at 13 of Gemini and the Sun at 13 of Sagittarius. And I might just very quickly actually share the chart. I've shared it in the longer video, but I might just very quickly share it with you. So we have the moon here at, ignore the houses, ignore the clock face. We have the moon here at 13 of Gemini, opposing the Sun at 13 of Sagittarius. And as I was just saying, we've got Venus, Sun, and Mars all in the sign of Sagittarius to do with flight. But the Sun and Moon in opposition are forming an exact, to the degree, mutable grand cross with the nodal axis in Pisces and Virgo. So this is known as the bendings, And it creates a kind of karmic choice point, really, of which way are we going to go? Which way are we going to react in our choices? Because there could be a lot of information coming out in this first half of December, particularly this week, because Gemini is to do with facts and information. It's to do with media, social media. It's a full moon that suggests a peak. That's a peak in the moon cycle. Also, the moon is closest to the Earth, so there's greater potency with that. Also, the sun, as I talked about in the longer video, is also conjunct the great attractor, this massive gravitational anomaly in space that gives more potency to this. So it's a big, there could be a huge amount of information coming out this week, and it could feel overwhelming when you get a lot of mutability. I mean, we've got the moon, we've got Neptune, Saturn, and the 3 planets in Sagittarius, all in what are called mutable signs. Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces are what are called mutable. So that's chameleon-like, malleable, fluid. And so the energy often can feel all over the place. And with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, of course, we still have what's real, what's not. And what's real, what's not. But it's very interesting, I think, that with all of the information that's coming out, the shadow side of Gemini and also of Pisces, because they're both dual signs. Gemini is the sign of the twins, Pisces is the sign of the two fishes. The shadow side of both of those signs is linked to duplicity or deception. You know, Gemini is often known as ruled by Mercury, is known as the trickster, you know, pulling a fast one. Whereas Pisces, and particularly Neptune in Pisces at the anaretic degree, the last degree, can be to do with a lot of deception. It can be to do with the media. It can be to do with pharmaceutical drugs. You know, there could be a lot of, and of course, this is the health axis, Virgo, Pisces, which I'll have talked about before. So issues that may come up in this area are to do with a lot of information, to do with the media, to do with social media, to do with health. Also, very importantly with Gemini, which I don't think I mentioned in the longer video, trade and tariffs. Trade and tariffs are ruled by Gemini. So this is very interesting. In the very bright light, because it will appear bigger and brighter, it'll be literally closer to the Earth, and on a cloudless night will appear bigger and brighter, is going to shine a very bright light on things like tariffs and trading. And so I think it's interesting that the Supreme Court, remember that Sagittarius is one of the two signs connected to the law, the other is Libra, scales of justice, but Sagittarius is about the truth. Remember that we've now entered a time of truth at the last new moon in Scorpio recently. So the Supreme Court is considering currently whether President Trump's tariffs were legal in his rulings. They haven't given a date when they will decide that. They've just said soon. They will give a ruling soon. But I find this very interesting that we have this, you know, this Gemini Sagittarius split here, because it could bring up quite a lot around that issue of the legality of the tariffs, and that in turn, of course, could you know, whatever the ruling is, there may be some destabilization in the markets, because Gemini is also to do with trading, you know, so the stock markets or currencies, that kind of thing. In fact, yes, Venus is just. In fact, let me just check quickly, because Venus has been in an opposition to Uranus. Venus is currencies, and it's going to be, not too far away at all. It's going to be about the 11th, 12th of December, Venus is going to come into that quindicile with Uranus, Venus currencies, Uranus instability. So we'll see, we will see what happens with that. And it's interesting also looking at President Trump's chart that he has Mars transiting Mars, which is down here. That for him is falling on his south node and his moon pretty much exactly. When you have transiting Mars on your moon, any of us, we can get pretty angry because Mars is the god of war, it's anger, it's aggression. The moon is our emotion, our instinctive emotional reaction. Particularly natally, he's got that in Sagittarius, which is mutable fire. So he may be angry about something. We will wait and see. The moon in his chart also rules the 11th house of politics and popularity. And the moon, by definition, he was born pretty much to lunar eclipse. The moon in his chart, Mars, transiting Mars, is also in President Trump's chart, opposing his sun, which is his chart ruler, because he has a Leo ascendant. So this is about his identity. His sun is also in the 10th house of leadership. So this could be quite an interesting week for him, one way or the other. So the other thing to point out is that the full moon, that the moon falls on the descendant and the sun falls on the ascendant of the US chart. One of the most popular and well-used charts for America is what's known as the Sibley chart. That is set for the 4th of July, 10 past 5 in the afternoon, Philadelphia, 1776. And that has an ascendant at 12 degrees, 21 minutes of Sagittarius. So this full moon is less, the sun is less than a degree from exactitude on that ascendant. And so this full moon straddles the ascendant-descendant axis of America. And so I can stop sharing here, I think. So the ascendant of a country is to do with its identity. The descendant tends to be about foreign relations as well. So we will see. It puts the US in the limelight in terms of news coming out about the US or for the US in some way. The other thing, and I think I've mentioned this in the previous video, but just to remember also that from the end of this month until early March, transiting Uranus will be conjunct the fixed star Algol, which is at about almost 26, 27 degrees of Taurus. And this is the fixed star to do with, in mythology, losing your head. Now that there are not many people who are beheaded these days, luckily. It can be about people going crazy, which I think is with all of this mutable energy, all of this news, all of this information coming out, where, it just feels overwhelming. That could well be the case. A lot of people just feel, I'm going crazy with all of this. What do I believe? Saturn Neptune, is it true? Is it not? And Saturn acting as a reality check on any deception of Neptune. But it's very common for this to mean that people in leadership positions, in the public eye, in public prominence, lose their position. And that's from the end of December, particularly until early March. So I think we could see a lot of changes in leadership, in government, as I look across the world. France is looking less than perfect. Germany, UK's had a very wobbly week, etc. And US I've already talked about. So be aware of that. So I have a very strong sense as we enter this month and that there's going to be this acceleration of the collapse of the old order. And I've talked about this really for the last 2 years, as many people have. And that old order has to collapse. The old structures, the old way we've organized our lives has to collapse. Doesn't mean that it has to collapse before the new higher dimensional reality births, because they're happening both in parallel, and that's why we many of us feel a foot in two worlds here. But certainly expect a lot of chaos at that 3D level, because with this high frequency light and these new very high vibrational light codes coming in, there isn't enough low vibrational energy to sustain the old density. It is literally cracking at the seam, crumbling at the seams. And it's an energetic thing. This is physics, it's energetic. And so expect that to happen. And, you know, I really would suggest you just observe. I mean, one of the many, many great things about astrology is this is right on time. Whatever is going to unfold, and I never know the exact events, it's right on time. Because we expect to see this kind of happening because of the astrology. You know, I've been talking about it for certainly the last 18 months, 2 years really, as many others have. So stay on your eagle's perch, observe, just know this is happening. Remember that very useful analogy that I've often talked about, that experience I had, which was just in my mid-20s when I was going to go off traveling for 5 months on my own in India and Nepal as a short Western single woman. And so I did a kind of very intensive martial arts course, and they were teaching us how to split a builder's plank. Many of you will have heard me speak about this before. And we were taught, you know, if you focus on the plank, focus on the obstacle, you really hurt your hand. But we were taught to focus 6 inches below the plank. Focus on where you want to get to. And then it becomes really quite easy. It's remarkable. You haven't suddenly become stronger in a moment. So focusing beyond the obstacles, the chaos, in terms of where you want to get to, what you want to create, that's your focus. Absolutely, that's your focus. I can't emphasize that enough, because, you know, we are coming together, more and more of us. This higher dimensional timeline is palpable. We can feel it. You know, more and more of us sense this. Many people are sensing it, feeling it, living it, dreaming it, and we have to embody it before we can fully see it in our reality. It's an internal, it's an inner process, but really do focus on where you want to get to. And remember that mantra of we're welcoming in an ever-expanding consciousness of love. And the other thing I'd like to say is another reason that I was prompted to film this video today, after I'd written my social media post on which this video is based. I happened to see Ann Tucker's weekly update. She does a beautiful channeled message every week, normally from the angels, but more recently she's been channeling the Mother of Creation. And beautiful channeling. She's very gifted, and the channeling today was extremely detailed, extremely practical, and I will also put the link for that below, because what Anne was channeling was fitting so well with what I'm seeing astrologically that it kind of triggered me to write the social media post and make this video. So my thoughts on this coming week in particular, this month, but this coming week in particular, could reach more of you. So I hope that's been helpful as a not a pamble, but hopefully quite a short video today, and sending you a lot of love, and I'll be back very soon with another update video on the second half of December, and of course the solstice video too. God bless. Bye for now. Thanks for listening.